How did football go from looking like this to this?
And then
Well, you see, like most things nowadays, football was made in China. It all started about 2,000 years ago when some Chinese villagers got bored and made a ball out of leather, feathers, and hair. And boom! The first football was made. The game was simple back then. None of that offside and red card nonsense. Just a couple of guys kicking a ball between bamboo cones in the streets of China, and it was called Cuju. This Cuju was played during through medieval times in Europe, but roll on a couple thousand years to 1863 and modern football was born. On October 26, 1863, the English Football Association was formed, and the original football rulebook was written. They prevented players from carrying the ball with their hands, banned violent play, and even introduced the offside rule, or some weird version of it. With this new standard set of rules and the British Empire taking over the world, the game started to spread like wildfire. On May 21st, 1904, FIFA was born. Around this time, some of the biggest football clubs we know today were created as leagues started to form and clubs started to play against each other. But in 1930, football would change forever. The first ever World Cup was played. Football became a global phenomenon, but not for long, because football was about to enter its dark ages. In 1939, some Austrian man with a mustache wanted to conquer the world and kicked off some war you might have heard of. Football was shut down. All competitions were canceled, most players were drafted into the military, and football was at its lowest point in decades. But in 1955, one player would make his debut for Brazil and change the game forever. At 15 years old, Pelé made his debut for Santos and just 2 years later became the youngest player ever to play in a World Cup. 17 years of age and Pelé tore it up. 2 goals in the final, and Pelé became the youngest World Cup winner, a record that he still holds today. This World Cup birthed the first football superstar, a player who was not only a football player but a cultural icon. Pelé picked up another 2 World Cups for Brazil and a few goals along the way. Even though most of these goals were in friendlies, that doesn't stop him from flexing them on the gram. But at the same time that Pelé was cooking up a Brazilian legacy, Europe was about to cement itself as the home of football with the creation of the European Cup. 16 teams from across Europe came together to fight for the trophy. Real Madrid won the first edition of the Cup, and the second, and a couple more in a row after that. They had what was considered to be the first ever super team, with football icons like Alfredo Di Stefano, Ferenc Puskás, and Raymond Kopa, who cemented Real Madrid as a European powerhouse. Like Bobby Charlton and Eusebio, but in 1966, 2 football players were about to rise to the top of the world and change the landscape of football in very different ways. Picture it, 1966. England and 2 stars had just made their debuts for Man United and Ajax. George Best and Johan Cruyff. They both had more talent than you could even imagine, and both dazzled fans on the pitch. Cruyff was part of an Ajax team that revolutionized the style of football played around Europe. He was at the center of the new total football philosophy. This wasn't the direct long ball into the box football that was known at the time. They played sexy football, dynamic positions, one-touch passes, high pressing, which made for a better viewing experience for the fans along with better results on the pitch. But George Best, on the other hand, was more focused on the rock star life. Don't get me wrong, Best was a pure talent on the pitch. I'm talking dribbles and goals that England had never seen before. But man preferred to score off the pitch. Best was a celebrity. All the women wanted him, and he wanted all the women. Parties, booze, cars, he wanted the lot, and he had the lot. He famously said, "If you'd given me the choice of going out and beating 4 men and smashing a goal in from 30 yards against Liverpool, or going to bed with Miss World, it would have been a difficult choice." Luckily, I had both. Cruyff and Best enjoyed the late 60s and 70s at the top of the game and both retired in 1984, making way for a new football icon to take over. The 1980s were a great time for football. It marked a significant rise in televised football and also saw the rise of Italian football with the 1982 World Cup victory for Italy and great success in the Champions League from AC Milan, Inter Milan, and Juventus. But the most notable part of this rise in Italian football was marked by the arrival of one player. On the 5th of July, 1984, Napoli unveiled their new signing to a stadium full of 75,000 fans. This was none other than Diego Maradona. The Argentinian arrived on the shores of Naples and transformed the club from a B-tier Italian side to winning their first ever league title and their second. He was the catalyst for Napoli's golden era in a time when Italian football was so strong. Although he did have a couple of controversies along the way, most notably in the 1986 World Cup quarterfinal, the goal that broke England's hearts, the hand of God. Maradona sent England out of the World Cup with a clear cheating moment that wasn't caught by the referee. Maradona went on to lift the trophy for Argentina, cementing himself as one of the greatest players to ever live. In the early 90s, Maradona started to slow down. A career of substance abuse had finally caught up with him, and his talent could take him no further. After testing positive for drugs, Maradona was given a 15-month ban from football and left Napoli. He made a return to football a couple of years later, but history repeated itself. Another drug test and another ban until he eventually retired in the late 90s. Now, the 90s were a significant time in the history of football. The offside rule was changed to the way we know it today, or at least most of us do. Sir Alex Ferguson had just been appointed as Manchester United manager, sparking a 26-year dynasty. Johan Cruyff took charge as the manager of Barcelona, implementing his total football philosophy. The European Cup was rebranded into the Champions League, and most notably, the English League was transformed into the Premier League. This shift to the Premier League structure saw a focus placed on TV rights and more focus on generating revenue. This would be the start of the big money coming into English football. This decade saw Man United rise to prominence in England, capping off the century with the first treble in English football. Real Madrid and Barcelona battled it out in La Liga, ending the decade with 5 titles to Barca, 4 to Real. The Serie A was largely dominated by AC Milan, thanks to iconic defenders like Maldini and Baresi. The players that would rise to prominence in this decade are known as the greatest generation of football players. Zinedine Zidane made his move to Juventus in 1996, where he would quickly become the best playmaker in the world, and over in Brazil, there was a striker with talent that nobody had ever seen before. Ronaldo Nazario would make the move from Cruzeiro to PSV and then to Barcelona. His scoring rate was unheard of, having 200 career goals by the age of 20. He picked up back-to-back Ballon d'Ors in the 96 and 97 seasons and was undoubtedly the best player in the world at the time. Zidane and Ronaldo faced each other in the World Cup final, where the Frenchman came out on top, bagging 2 goals to take home the trophy. Ronaldo made the move to Inter Milan, where he continued to fire goals in, but started to pick up a couple serious injuries, which became a common problem throughout the rest of his career. As the century came to a close and the 2000s came knocking, Real Madrid weren't playing around. Florentino Perez was collecting infinity stones, making a team full of stars, the Galacticos. Figo, Beckham, Zidane, and Ronaldo signed one season after another saw Real Madrid lift a Champions League and a couple of league titles, but this meant more than just trophies. This was a blockbuster lineup that saw football shift focus from the power on the pitch to the commercial power of football. But there was still hope for the clubs without the Galactico budget, as Porto had just appointed a manager who would go on to do the impossible. In 2004, Mourinho would lead Porto through the Champions League group stages, a round of 16 last-minute winner against Man United, a quarter-final win against Lyon, and a semi-final win against Deportivo landed the underdog team in the final. A dominant game saw Jose Mourinho lift the Champions League title for the first and only time in the club's history, putting Jose in the spotlight as the special one. At the same time, Chelsea were just bought out by Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich, marking the start of oil money in football. Mourinho jumped on the Chelsea train, making the Premier League a three-team league. Chelsea, Man United, and Arsenal. Mourinho, Ferguson, and Wenger. This was box office entertainment, but Man United were about to shift the tides in their favor when they signed an 18-year-old kid from Portugal that would become the face of football. Cristiano Ronaldo landed in Manchester in 2003. He was a raw talent, lots of potential, but was ineffective. Lots of dribbles and tricks, but no end product. Sir Alex Ferguson saw the talent in the kid and knew that he could turn him into a superstar. With each season that went by, Ronaldo just got better. 4 league goals in his first season, 5 in the second, then 9, 17, and in the 2007 season, he broke the Premier League goal-scoring record, bagging 31 league goals, also lifting the Premier League, the Champions League, and his first Ballon d'Or. One more season with United saw him lift a 3rd Premier League title in a row before Real Madrid smashed the transfer world record, dropping $100 million on the superstar. This transfer was the start of the La Liga dominance that would last the next 10 years because as he signed for Real Madrid, there was a kid playing in Barcelona who was making headlines week after week. Lionel Messi made his debut for Barcelona in 2004 after graduating from the academy and, just like Ronaldo, there was a season-by-season build-up, but his talent was undeniable. But Messi's career would explode when Pep Guardiola signed as the Barcelona manager in 2008. 1 year later, Barcelona would lift the treble, beating Ronaldo's Man United in the final, where Messi scored 34 league goals and picked up his first Ballon d'Or. So, now the year is 2009. 1 Ballon d'Or to Messi and 1 to Ronaldo. A Champions League each too, and they were now playing for the 2 biggest clubs in Spain with a rivalry that spanned a century. Shit was about to get interesting. Spanish football was taking over. The Spanish national team would go on to win 3 tournaments back-to-back with legends like Xavi, Iniesta, Ramos, and Casillas. Pep Guardiola and Messi would go on to win 3 Champions Leagues in 4 years, only losing 1 year out to Jose Mourinho's Inter Milan. Messi would pick up 4 Ballon d'Ors in a row, leaving Ronaldo for dust. That was it. Messi was the greatest player of all time at just 25 years old. He had set records nobody would ever break, like his 91 goals in a year or his 4 Ballon d'Ors. But Real Madrid and Ronaldo would bounce back in 2013 and 14, winning the Champions League and Ronaldo picking up back-to-back Ballon d'Ors. The season that followed, Barcelona formed one of the most iconic attacks in football. MSN, Messi, Suarez, and Neymar would score 122 goals between them in their first season together, seeing yet another treble go to Barca and yet another Ballon d'Or go to Messi. But one man was about to shift the tides back in Real Madrid's favor. In January 2016, Zinedine Zidane was appointed as manager of Real Madrid. This team would go on to win 1 Champions League and another, completing the three-peat. This also saw Ronaldo pick up yet another 2 Ballon d'Ors, leaving Messi and Ronaldo at a 5-5 stalemate. We also saw Luka Modric picking up a Ballon d'Or in 2018, which marked the end of a 10-year back and forth between Messi and Ronaldo. Now, I know that Messi and Ronaldo were the faces of this era, but there were a few other notable moments in this period. I'm talking a World Cup final in 2016 that saw Zidane on smoke, a Panenka penalty, and a headbutt in a dramatic loss to Italy, a Brazilian nightmare in a 7-1 loss in the 2014 World Cup to Germany, who won the whole tournament. Manchester City and PSG joined Chelsea as big clubs thanks to oil money investments. Sir Alex Ferguson retired, marking the end of Man United's golden years, and Leicester City did the impossible, winning the Premier League as relegation favorites. Okay, now back to 2018. Video Assistant Referee, or VAR, has been introduced and, to be honest, isn't much better than the old system. France lift the World Cup with the emergence of a kid called Kylian Mbappe, and the Premier League are taking back market share as they establish themselves as the new best league in the world. The money in the Premier League was more than any other league could compete with. The top managers were all off to the Premier League to build super teams. Mourinho, Klopp, and Guardiola, all in one league, meant for some quality football. Pep Guardiola, coupled with Man City's unlimited resources, meant a new dynasty was forming. 5 Premier Leagues in 6 years, only losing out in the pandemic year to Liverpool, and the second ever treble in English football meant a new era of dominance. Signing Erling Haaland from Dortmund cemented his dominance as Haaland and Mbappe looked to take the box office spot from Messi and Ronaldo. But Messi wasn't about to give up that spot just yet. 3 more Ballon d'Ors came Messi's way as Ronaldo went bouncing from club to club. Now, Messi has moved to the MLS and Ronaldo to Saudi Arabia. Many players have followed in Ronaldo's footsteps as Saudi has emerged as a financial powerhouse in the world of football. This now makes room for the new era of football to take over. I'm talking Haaland, Bellingham, Mbappe, Vinicius. With the looks of these players, we can sleep easy knowing that football is in safe hands.